It's really wonderful to be here with you guys today. I think we have an exceptional panel for you. Some of the best interoperability protocols are represented here today. So just going to go one by one. We have on my left Andriy Velykyv from Allbridge. He's co-founder of Allbridge. And then on the video, we have Hendrik Hofstadt, Director of Special Projects at Jump, and also a core contributor to Wormhole. And then also on video, we have Bryan Pellegrino, co-founder and CEO of LayerZero. And when Zaki gets here, he'll likely need no introduction as well. He's founder of Sommelier and also co-founder of Abacus, a new interoperability protocol. So yeah, maybe let's start with a quick round of intros. If you could share a little bit about yourselves and your projects. And maybe to kick things off, let's take it to Andriy.
Okay, thank you so much. And I'm proud to be here. Thank you so much for inviting. It is my real pleasure to be present here and to speak here in such a great company. Hey guys, happy to see you. And we launched on mainnet in July last year as Allbridge. We focus mainly on connecting those chains that are EVM-like to those that are not. We currently support 13 chains, and we are adding 2 more in April this year. So like in the next 3-4 weeks. And yeah, I would be happy to talk today about the issues we are facing while bridging the chains together. And it is probably time to pass the microphone to our friends, partners, colleagues that are present with us using the video.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, next up, Hendrik. I'll let you go next.
Great, thanks for having me. Yeah, Wormhole is a cross-chain messaging protocol, currently connecting 8 chains. We're aiming to get to about 18 by the end of the year. That's really the core of like communication between chains, being able to go everywhere. At the core, it's cross-chain messaging, but we're really striving to solve 3 of the main problems out there. One is allowing you to take your asset cross-chain and making it a truly multi-chain asset. We're doing that with what we call X assets through the portal, which is a self-service portal where you can make your asset a cross-chain asset that can freely move between any chains. The other thing is like taking your decentralized application cross-chain, making it accessible to many audiences out there, like with the best possible user experience, without 10 times switching wallets and so on. That's the big mission. And what we call X data is helping do cross-chain querying and giving you as a developer access to data that is spread across chain. Build a multi-chain oracle, fetch prices, like not even require an oracle because you can just query the swap from Uniswap. That's where we want to get, and we want to make it as simple as possible to create a truly seamless cross-chain experience. I'll pass it on. Thanks.
Really cool, thank you. Yeah, next up, Bryan.
Hey guys, Bryan Pellegrino, one of the 3 co-founders and CEO of LayerZero Labs. Like everybody here, trying to solve interop. We launched almost 3 weeks ago at this point. Launched Stargate, which was the first application built on top. We just crossed 4 billion TVL right before this, which I think makes it the fastest growing DeFi protocol ever. And then somebody randomly launched an NFT mint this morning that was going crazy today. So it's been fun to see things built on top. Looking forward to seeing many, many more things built on top as well.
Cool, exciting. And so I think that's a good segue for my next question, which is, you know, a lot has happened in the last, I would say, year in the bridging space. I think things have really kind of exploded. Why do you guys think that bridging is important now, and what's making it such a hot area of Web3? Let's go backwards this time. Let's start with Bryan.
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally, like, go back in time, you know, 12, 18 months ago, and nothing was happening on other chains. It was like the very early days of Binance Smart Chain, and they just started to tick up, and you started to see these articles every day hey, BSC has more volume than Ethereum does. And that was like the first time that people were even thinking like that was any possibility, you know? It was just like nothing was happening before. And so I think it's more on that, like things are actually hitting scale. This problem wasn't necessarily apparent that long ago. But now you see huge, vibrant communities with Avalanche, with Polygon, with Solana, with all these different ecosystems. And you see huge amounts of activity basically starting to build up on there. I saw the Avalanche people were tweeting their TPS numbers in terms of like what the APIs were querying. It was like 2 billion for DeFi Kingdoms and like 15 billion for Avalanche. So, I mean, just real usage is starting to hit all of these chains. And new layer ones, other layer ones, everybody is starting to sort of absorb a bunch of this overflow from Ethereum. You're starting to see real novel use cases getting pushed out to other chains that can scale or can hit sort of this amount of throughput. And naturally, I think interoperability like is a byproduct of that.
Cool. Hendrik.
I can only agree with Bryan there. It's almost like it's almost like we went from like we have these ecosystems popping up. We have new L1s, we have L2s coming in, and all of them have a bit of a first of all, there's a bootstrapping problem because there's liquidity spread across other chains, there's applications on other chains, and a chain potentially has a new way to draw in users. Like for example, in the Celo world, you have Plumo, which makes the mobile wallet experience extremely accessible. But there's a lot of attractive decentralized applications on other chains as well, and assets on other chains as well. For an attractive ecosystem to build that includes like all of the communities that can serve everyone, there needs to be connectivity between those. At the same time, DeFi protocols think now starting to grow bigger because truth is we don't have just blockchain users anymore. We oftentimes have individual L1 users that only have the wallet for a particular chain. Some have multiple wallets, but truthfully, I think we want to come back from like L1 users back to blockchain users, people that use blockchain technology, decentralized finance, without having to think where they really are and make use of the best of each of these platforms. That could be the mobile wallet experience on a Celo, that could be like zero knowledge capabilities and privacy reserving abilities of other chains. And in this heterogeneous environment, I think that we are now starting to see where not everything looks the same, and L1s and L2s have individual extreme factors of differentiation. There's just no other way than to connect between them and abstract that interaction away. And that's our mission.
Yeah, I would probably would like to add a little bit on why bridges are important. A lot of things have already been said. I just wanted to say that there are, for example, there are some blockchains that have a lot of liquidity and a lot of users, but they are sort of isolated due to their nature of their technology. To be specific, I would mention XRP Ledger. We who have been in crypto for a while, we know that there is Ripple Army, there are a lot of users, a lot of money, but they are staying within their own ecosystem. Now, when we were thinking about building bridge to them, I was thinking, hey, how cool it could be if we use CUSD and let them play with that. All those people who are just sitting with their single asset somewhere out there now potentially can have access to a variety of tools on other markets. So their liquidity starts flowing in and out into other chains, namely Celo. And I think it is a pretty cool use case bridging such chains together.
Yeah, really interesting. Cool. Well, let's see. Where should we go next? You know, I think when we think about bridges, or at least when I think about bridges, the number one thing that comes to mind for me is that security seems to be a very difficult problem for bridges. For folks who are new to the space here, you know, why would you say that it's so hard to build secure bridges? Let's start with Andriy this time.
I think that the nature of the bridge technology, the whole fact that bridges, they have to somehow interact with the user's funds in one way or another, makes them a potential attack interesting for attackers. For instance, I don't think that this situation is totally different from the situation we have seen in, for example, 2016, 2017, where during the 2017 bull market, a lot of user funds were concentrated on exchanges, and day by day we have seen exchanges being hacked and hacked and hacked. And some of those security concerns have been raised back then. Now, since then, that time, the market evolved, and the exchanges, they sort of found a way to protect themselves and found how they should do that. The bridge technology, it is on one side interesting for the attackers because they can get hold of a lot of money. And on the other side, bridge tech, it is still relatively new, and we have not yet analyzed all the potential attack vectors. We're trying to, but the ugly truth is that we all can be hacked. You know, we cannot oversee 100% of all the hackers' ideas. We can just to do as much as we can. We can do the security audits, we can do bug bounty things, but we still all go to sleep each and every night thinking that maybe this is the sad night when we can be attacked. And I don't think any of us working here in this space can promise that the attack would never happen. We can just try to find a way to minimize the impact on the users if it does happen.
Awesome. Hendrik.
Yeah. I think at its core, like a big demonstration of how big of targets bridges are the fact that you have like two people running projects with two of the biggest bug bounty, or the two biggest bug bounty programs out there, like you're just sitting in this round. And it really shows like, when you go cross-chain, like you'll either implicitly or explicitly or implicitly accrue a lot of TVL as value, or like different terms of like IOUs form across chains, and value is tied to the bridge's security. And the truth is there's so many dimensions to security, and bridges need to get it right. And at its core, there's obviously smart contract security. That's something that can affect everyone. And then depending on the bridge protocol, obviously the security of whatever the trust mechanism is, whether that's oracles, whether that's individual signers, or even, like Zaki's not here, but I'll represent him in that situation, light clients where the chains actually verify each other. And there's a lot of like aspects that leak into that, because it's not just the smart contracts, it's not just the raw trust model, because at the core, when you connect two chains or more chains, these chains also implicitly start trusting each other, like at least the two chains you are connecting in a direct interaction, in a lot of cases even more, in a coherent construct between those. So there's other security aspects that play into it, and I think what Andriy said here about the actual security of the chains makes a lot of sense, because we need to think about finality. We need to think about L1s or L2s actually failing, because within the threat model of a bridge oftentimes is also the security of the chains that are connected. So it's really about minimizing like the blast radius of even a chain failing. So it's a huge mission for a bridge, and I think the best thing we can do is pay large bounties, have extremely good processes internally in development, extremely high diligence, and think about this every day. And at the core, build protocols that try to minimize TVL and maximize productivity of assets and capital deployed.
Awesome. Bryan.
Yeah, no, I mean, largely agree with everybody. I think ultimately, like, again, like Hendrik said, right, I think us have the largest bug bounties by far. I think the largest prior was like 2 million, and then they made it 10 million, and then we just made like two 15 million ones, or 30 million total. Like, everybody who's in this space is taking security, right? Everybody should be taking security very, very, very seriously, right? And that comes with a combination of things. Like, one is the smart contract side. You have these contracts that live on every chain, and like, there needs to be an audit process. You do need to have bug bounties. Like, you need to incentivize people to act good, to everybody be looking, and just, you know, that part, like, undoubtedly, that's par for the course with any DeFi protocol. But then at the end of the day, like, those contracts can't communicate with each other. So you have this other layer, this like transport layer, and that's a whole nother problem, right? You're basically solving for like two sets of things, and they both have their own security models. They both have like their own sort of trust assumptions. Everybody's trying to build better and better systems that allow them to become more and more trust minimized. And I think ultimately, just like that's the goal. It's a work in progress. It's a huge number of people are working on this, and I think at the end of the day, anybody operating in this space like needs to have security as their number one priority for the very foreseeable future.
Awesome, thank you. Cool, so we have Zaki now on stage with us. Do you want to maybe start by just quickly giving a quick intro, and then the question that we're on currently is, why is bridge security so hard?
So, absolutely. Hi, I'm Zaki Manian. I'm mainly known for my role in sort of creating Cosmos, which has a bridging protocol called IBC. I'm also working on a protocol called Abacus that is sort of spitting out of Celo as an omni-chain message passing multi-chain DApp protocol. So these are the things I work on in the bridge space.
Cool, and why is bridge security so hard?
Why is bridge security so hard? So what I would say is that bridges are in many ways similar to what exchanges were in sort of previous versions of blockchains. So like when you know, if you were around in 2011, 2012, 2013, like exchange hacks were just part of every day. And in many ways, exchanges are very much the same thing as bridges. They interact with multiple blockchain protocols. They're essentially transferring coins onto their own side chain, which is the exchange database. And in many ways, what we're doing with the bridge protocol world is like recreating the exchange, a lot of the same dynamics and a lot of the same threat model as exchanges. But we want to retain permissionless. We want to have this world of like sort of ad hoc actors. And the protocol development challenge is, how do you build something that's like a centralized exchange, but is transparent, is auditable, is secure, but like is able to defend against many of the same threats that exchanges have, but you don't have the benefit of, let's say, KYCing your customers.
Cool. So I think Hendrik mentioned something interesting. He talked about how bridges have multiple different security models, and I think this is just a reality of the trade-off space that we're in. There's trade-offs between gas. There's trade-offs between maybe ease of use, and then ultimately trade-offs with regards to security. How do each of you think about those trade-offs, and then also how do you think about how you kind of educate the users of these bridges and maybe even the developers who are building on top of these bridges? What's the right way for these folks to understand exactly what trade-offs they're taking? Maybe this time let's start with Andriy.
Yeah, okay, so coming to this issue with the user experience, right? While we as developers, we want to make the bridge the most reliable, the most secure, we also have to deal with the fact that sometimes for users, all those extra measures can be frustrating. They need to wait longer, right, for the transactions to confirm. They need to do additional research, which from my experience, users are not always willing to do, even if you point them out into the direction like, hey guys, please look, here is the link, and using this link you can educate yourself, understand what rep tokens are, and then we can even guide them to the necessary, I don't know, for instance, AMM, to exchange the rep tokens to native, and we can publish all the information. And in the end of the day, the users would still want to see a one-click solution. They don't want to do the research. They want to use the bridge to get to what they need. And they want to use this bridge ASAP and for the lowest cost possible. And it is hard to address all those things at the same time, like a reliable solution that costs as minimum as possible and provides the best possible user experience. So my vision is that we as the company would be probably heading into the direction where we optimize the user experience at the cost of maybe making some fees higher, making some necessary, how do I say that, sometimes we may not be as decentralized as I would like. In some ways we choose to be more centralized approach in terms of validations to make it faster and to help the users to get what they want, while I understand we are sacrificing some level of decentralization, and it is not good, but it is what it is. And regarding the cost of the transactions, in wrapping all the transactions in the single transaction to address another user pain where they just want to click the button and then the magic happens, I think we will also follow this direction, but still retaining a way to have this button. I am an experienced user, I understand what I am doing, please let me do everything myself manually. That may be an option, right? For those who want to do it quick, they would have, and easy, they would have this choice. And for those who understand what they are doing, they would have an alternative. It is pretty much like buying a car back in the days with a manual transmission or automatic. Automatic transmission costs more, but it is easier to use. And for those who know how to operate manual transmission, well, they can cut the costs and get the car cheaper. I'm not sure if it is relevant to 2022. I think most of the cars are automatic nowadays, so maybe the bridges at some point, but for now it is like that.
That's awesome. Maybe let's go to Bryan next. So the question was, if you remember, it's there's lots of different security models. How do we help developers understand and users understand these trade-offs?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think ultimately, a lot of it comes down to right now about education. I think there's way too much happening in the market. There's 100 different bridges and messaging protocols right now. Nobody, like even for me who spends all of my time in this, as does like almost everybody on this panel, right? Like, it's hard for me to keep up with the people who are sending me, what about this? What about this? What about this, right? Like, it's just hard to do even for us. So for like an application, applications are ultimately just like talking to somebody and being like, yeah, that sounds good, and going to build, right? So I think a lot of it about education and about like being more transparent about the systems that are being built on. And then ultimately past that, I think it's sort of our role to move these systems into better and better systems over time. And hopefully the community like holds us to that standard of both the broader community and the developers of creating systems that make it so that, again, the developers don't need to do so much vetting, right? Like ultimately there's like a class of developer who just wants to build something, right? And so it's about being transparent about what assumptions they're taking when they're using any given solution, and then continuously moving to a better and more secure solution. And I ultimately just think it's that.
Hendrik.
I agree with Bryan here. I think it's a lot also about, like, right now, a lot about developer education, because in the end, the developers oftentimes make this decision before they start using it on behalf of the user of their protocol. They need to understand the different models, and I think for all of the protocols present here, I think the mission is to make it consistent and understandable, so such that users will know when they have a protocol that's backed by, for example, Wormhole, they know what they're getting, and that what that model is, and that model is flexible. I think that was at the core when we started developing the protocol, of having a swappable trust back and being able to deliver whatever technology right now allows us to. And eventually, and that's the ultimate goal, is that is going to be fully trustless, running light clients of chains and having them verify each other. Because that's pretty much the lowest amount of trust you can get to any third party. And that leaks through the application, through the bridge protocol, through the application to the user. So it's kind of the educate devs about how to educate the users and make it clear for the devs what they're getting and where this is going, without requiring them to make a move. Because they should only have to care about taking their protocol cross-chain. They shouldn't have to care about how to design with the bridge in order to be maximally secure forever and parameterize it. They should just get the best that is out there right now, plug it in, and stay on top of things automatically, because we as bridges need to think about that in the background.
So one thing that I have been thinking a lot about this is where does the responsibility for evaluating security lie? And I think the last place it is with users. Users, when they interact with bridges, tend to have very short-term exposure to bridged assets. They usually bridge their asset and trade it for something else, there's usually a very transactional relationship with the bridge. So then where does the risk actually fall? And where I think the risk falls is with DAOs. DAOs are usually the ones that tend to hold these assets in collateral pools or liquidity pools where they're incentivizing the liquidity pool. And DAOs are probably where I think this bridge security question is probably going to be finally addressed if it's addressed successfully. And I think the best example of sort of a DAO evaluating risk is the collateral risk evaluations that MakerDAO does. And I think the entire sort of multi-chain DeFi community can actually look at those as a great example of what we could aspire towards when we're sort of evaluating the risk of various bridges and to the sort of soundness of the assets that we bring into our protocols.
It's interesting. That and maybe DeFi dApps that I guess take money and have people lock it up in LP positions.
Yeah, there's like a huge opportunity to start evaluating risk when we decide like what LP positions to incentivize or what collateral to accept into various sort of lending pools.
That's cool. So Hendrik mentioned like client-based bridging. I think Cosmos obviously is the leader in this space and has shown us that this is now possible. But not every proof of stake chain that's launched in the last few years, has a like client or can even, with our current consensus protocols, support a like client. So what does this mean for that future? Can we bring the Cosmos future to EVM chains? I'll start with you, Zaki.
I think like one of the so like clients are like surprisingly hard. I don't think when we started working on Tendermint, we thought it would take 5 years before we had a production-ready Tendermint-like client. Celo has done like really admirable work in leveraging zero-knowledge proofs to like have an efficient like client for their consensus protocol. I'm actually like positively encouraged by what's happening in our industry. There are people like the NIL Foundation that are doing just like groundbreaking work applying zero-knowledge proof technology to generate like client proofs for things that like most people conventionally thought would be like impossible or prohibitive to do like client proofs for. And I think that's really exciting to me. I can see a world slowly coming together where there are pluggable like client proofs for sort of all of the sort of major consensus protocols, no matter how custom. And some of these approaches that the NIL Foundation is taking is actually surprisingly generalizable to like client proofs in general. So I would encourage people to take a look at what they're working on.
That's cool. Anybody else have any thoughts on like clients?
For the last few months, I have started to see some interest from the users to integrate Cosmos chains. So requests started coming in. Before that, we haven't seen any of them, to be honest. Now we see a few chains that want to be integrated, and I can say that for those that support CosmWasm, it should not be a problem at all, as long as we are speaking about the bridges that already integrated Terra. So it is pretty much straightforward at that point. For those that don't support, there may be issues, but I'm happy to see that the whole ecosystem is taking off and there is a growing interest from users.
I think ZK rollups are pretty much paving the way for a lot of this, because they are making sure that a lot of the L1s and even L2s, if you think about nesting, have the capabilities to efficiently verify like different types of zero-knowledge proofs. That's really paving the way, and then kind of generalized compute, what the NIL Foundation is doing in building these out is really demonstrating we're getting closer and closer to viability. So it's important to like keep track of these developments and then help push them. Because I think one of the key limiting factors really was like proving times and verification efficiency. But both of these are making tremendous moves. There's like an almost order of magnitude improvement every couple of months. And if that continues, I think there's a bright future ahead for these type of applications. And even Plumo particularly has demonstrated that like this is more viable than some might think and closer than some might think.
Yeah, I just second that in general. Like, technology generally gets better with time. I think we've all seen that, right? Like, yeah, the stuff with state-proof generation right now is not, you know, you wouldn't want to use it in production right now, but it's getting a lot better, and I think there's a ton of exciting things happening on that side of things. So I think everybody is watching it, everybody's paying attention, and I think it is very, very encouraging for sure.
I would also say that there's an enormous benefit to designing your bridging protocol in such a way that, like, the transport layer, essentially how you authenticate between the chains, is pluggable so that you can improve this over time as technology matures.
Absolutely, absolutely agree.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that might be a good segue to kind of another topic, moving away from security now. You know, there's been I think, an interest in not just bridging tokens, but potentially sending arbitrary messages between chains recently. I think both Abacus and LayerZero, I think, have kind of chosen to focus on this model to begin with, whereas I think Allbridge and Wormhole are kind of focused more on the token bridging. Kind of curious what you guys think of the difference here, and how do you see the future playing out? Let's go with Bryan this time.
Yeah, I don't think there is a difference. So anybody who's heard me talk, like, from day one, I've said in the beginning, right? Value transfers is like a special case of generic messaging. I think anybody who was purely doing value transfer prior is going to be doing message passing soon if they're not. Ultimately, again, it's just a different structured message. So I don't think there is any difference. I think everybody who is doing value transfer was actually doing messages. We were just doing, like, one specific message rather than something generalizable. So I do think almost everybody's moving in that direction now. But yeah, I think general message passing is by far the thing that people want to solve for. It's by far the thing that we've put sort of all of our effort into. You know, we don't have wrapped asset bridge. We don't have, like, we didn't focus on any of those things at all. And I think sort of everybody is moving in that direction. So yeah, I don't think there is a difference at all.
Hendrik?
Yeah, actually, I think there's a common kind of misconception about Wormhole. At its start about 8 months ago, Wormhole started with just messaging, and then the bridge was built on top, the token bridge, and is still running as the first application that was built on top of it. I couldn't agree more with Bryan, as, like, messaging is the core. We see a lot of people trying to do similar things, as I said in the intro, of, like, taking decentralized applications cross-chain, taking assets cross-chain, creating multi-chain assets, multi-chain NFTs. And I think that the mission really for us is to make these use cases as simple as possible, and even abstracting the messaging away. It's kind of, messaging is your TCP, it's like a low-level protocol to communicate between chains. But when you open a website, all as, like, someone building a web application you care about is HTTP, the thing that's serving you the website. And I think it's going to be similar with bridges. That's what we're trying to do with X-Steps, is basically build that HTTP of, on top of the message passing that everyone can use if they have, like, complex use cases, build a layer to access steps cross-chain. And build these higher level protocols on top. And so I think IBC is a protocol that can run on both Wormhole and the LayerZero, and can just be wrapped over that as a channel while the light client infrastructure is being built out to other chains. So it's really about having that primitive, but then making it as easy as possible for developers to use higher level protocols on top. And that's what Wormhole's doing today and has been for about 8 months.
Cool, Andriy?
Yeah, I also totally agree. And I think that when we are saying that we breach the assets and we amplify that on our website, it is just sort of business positioning of the breach, and we are addressing the most common use case that users, they can easily grasp. So what are you doing? We're breaching the assets. Okay, we understand that. Now, for more specific applications and for other use cases, we for sure are interested in doing that. It is just a matter of educating the users so the users understand why they need that and what exactly they need. Maybe we can also educate them, show them the possibilities. That is not just about the bridging of the assets. It is so much deeper.
So one of the things that I think developers who are coming outside of blockchain find most confusing about blockchain is this idea that you have to like choose what chain you're going to be on. I think for those of us who are native to this chain, we like have like sort of older blockchain people are like used to this sort of ecosystem war. But the like sort of future, the generation of developers that we're onboarding right now basically finds the like Solana, Ethereum, Cosmos, etc. split to be completely alien. And I think the sort of end stage of like the bridging process is that like developers will no longer will get what they want, which is there is some set of use cases where people sort of want a sovereign chain. There's some use cases where people want to be densely interconnected into a single L1 ecosystem. But I think there is an incredibly like broad range of application developers who are just learning, who want to learn how to make their application ubiquitously available wherever there are users. And I think the sort of end state of like what you know the bridging application development, what like Abacus is trying to aim for, is a developer experience where you're like, oh no, just we're like the same user experience is available across basically anywhere there are users.
That's a nice vision, and I guess you know we're seeing early signs of this by having protocols bridge their tokens over to every chain and having that be available on every chain. And when that happens across multiple bridges, we end up with having multiple representations of these same assets on all of these chains. That ends up being obviously confusing to end users and also potentially maybe less capital efficient, maybe not. Curious what you guys think about these representation kind of issues. What's the future going to look like? Is this going to be the case forever, or are we going to find the solution to this? Let's start with Zaki this time.
So in a vision where like we move away from bridged assets to sort of multi-chain dApps, the token representation wars should essentially become irrelevant. Because what we're capturing is much more user intent, and the job of like the underlying system is to like sort of execute that intent. So like my intent is to trade, my intent is to stake, my intent is to vote in governance, and so you know these token representation issues may essentially go away.
Cool, Andriy?
Can I mention Celo Open Token Standard Initiative, or it is confidential? I'm not sure.
Do it, yeah.
So I think it was January when we were discussing with other bridges, bridge into Celo, that for users it is really confusing to have multiple versions of the single asset. Let's take any stable, for instance. And the concept behind that initiative was that there would be a single contract and all the bridges, bridge into, will have the access of this contract issuing the asset, and bridges would sort of have the quote on how much of those pool they can take and distribute to users. Now, there were two potential problems that we encountered within those discussions. One is related to governance and business model, because at some point it seemed that for those bridges who already control the asset that is the most popular on the chain already, there is no much business logic in agreeing that other bridges would have sort of access to the same asset too. And the other thing that has been disturbing for everyone, it was the security issue, because when, for example, one of the bridges would be compromised and we all take the assets from the same pool, that would automatically mean the security problem for all the other bridges involved. So far, we are sitting in April 2022, so we did not come to any sort of the conclusion, but we were thinking about such decision to get around this fractionalization of the liquidity, which we, of course, are all thinking of. There are a couple of other approaches that could be used to address this issue. One of those would be to embed this AMM that converts wrapped tokens to native that users are normally guided to after they cross the bridge within the bridge itself, so that the users would never see the wrapped assets at all. And that is cool goal, but again, there are a lot of business things and dealing with liquidity providers, making everyone happy within this process. But ultimately, I think that in a couple of years from now, users would stop seeing wrapped versions of assets one way or another.
It's a beautiful future. I'm being told that we're getting close to time, so unless Hendrik or Bryan, unless you guys have a strong desire to answer that question, I wanted to end with just a question on, asking if you guys have any closing thoughts or any announcements you want to make. Let's go through them. Yeah. Let's start with Hendrik.
Great. Closing thoughts. I think I can only echo what Zaki said. It's about user intent. It's about users being blockchain users again, and not necessarily individual L1 users, and utilizing the best L1 that is there for the developer. I think that's a shared vision we have, and whether that entails like assets that are built natively to go cross-chain, the core messaging, or just like layers like X steps to take your application cross-chain. We don't know yet. We're trying to pave that path for people to build on top. Very soon, one of these, one chain is going to join the 8 chains, which is going to be Celo for Wormhole in the next couple months. So very excited announcing that as well. And I'm very excited to see how users will be able to take their dApps from other chains to Celo, and from Celo and make them available from other places as well to really solve this UX problem. That's really what it comes down. As much as we're all technologists, I think UX is what we all strive for and what the main vision of our companies are.
Exciting. You guys heard it here first. Bryan, on to you.
Yeah, well, I do have a ton to say on the other topic. I can save it for another panel. I think it's a hugely interesting topic. Broadly, closing thoughts are, I don't think I have anything, additional that we didn't cover in the panel. I think it's a very, very rapidly evolving space. I think security needs to be, again, if the last couple of weeks have sort of taught everybody anything, like needs to be top of mind always. Like Hendrik and Wormhole, LayerZero is going to be opening up to Celo very, very, very soon. So excited about that. We'll have an endpoint there, which will connect it to the other 7 chains, among the others that we're sort of opening up. So very excited about that. Celo team has been amazing. So that process has been great. Excited to see what everyone builds.
Exciting. Zaki?
Hey, so, this is one of the sort of early days of us talking about Abacus publicly. We are having an Abacus happy hour after later this evening. If you find one of the Abacus team around, we could let you know where it is. Other than that, I think the other thing I would say...
Who are the other Abacus team members?
The other people who are here are Nam and John and Morgan. John Cole and Morgan, who are also here. And we're around. We'll be around for the rest of the conference. So there's that.
Cool. Happy hour.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for inviting. And I also would like to encourage users to share more what you want to see from the bridges. I mean, if you want some assets, if you want some use cases, if you want some additional chains, if you want some pain points to be solved, we all here who are sitting here and present on the video call, we are all building for you. So I think it would be enormous help if you can share your thoughts, ideas, and your wishes, how you see the future of the bridges, and then it's going to be our job to make that happen, to build for you.
Amazing. Cool. Well, let's end with a big round of applause for the speakers. Thank you, guys.